When the explosion echoed through downtown, Robert was dropping off a passenger. Sirens wailed in the distance. "There's a terrorist attack." People were screaming. Everyone was fleeing in panic. Robert closed the car door, gripped the steering wheel firmly, and drove straight toward the explosion. At that moment, no one could have predicted what he was about to do. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If stories of hidden heroism and unexpected courage resonate with you, subscribe for more tales of extraordinary people who reveal their true nature when crisis strikes. The morning sun cast long shadows across the streets of downtown Minneapolis as Robert Sullivan began his daily routine. At 68, he had been driving the same yellow Crown Victoria taxi for 12 years, navigating the city's streets with the quiet efficiency that had made him one of the most reliable drivers in the Metro cab fleet. Robert's taxi was unremarkable: weathered seats, a slightly cracked windshield, and the lingering scent of coffee and old leather. But to those who knew him, Robert himself was equally unremarkable. He rarely spoke unless spoken to, kept his radio low, and maintained the kind of professional anonymity that made passengers comfortable sharing their personal stories during long rides across the city. The morning dispatch came through his radio at 8:47 a.m. Car 47, pick up at the Marriott downtown, heading to the airport. "Copy that, dispatch," Robert replied in his calm, measured voice, the same tone he had used for every call over the past 12 years. His passenger was Jennifer Martinez, a business consultant who traveled frequently and always requested Robert specifically. She appreciated his quiet professionalism and the way he navigated traffic with an almost supernatural awareness of potential problems before they developed. "Morning, Robert," she said, settling into the back seat with her laptop bag. "Good morning, Miss Martinez. Terminal 1, correct?" "That's right. How's traffic looking today?" Robert's eyes swept the rearview mirror, checking not just for Jennifer's comfort, but conducting the kind of situational awareness assessment that most drivers never considered. "Should be smooth sailing. I'll take the 4th Street route to avoid the construction on Hennepin." As they drove through downtown Minneapolis, Robert's trained eyes automatically cataloged details that other drivers would never notice. The unusual number of unmarked vans parked near the federal building, the subtle bulges in the jackets of men standing near bus stops who weren't waiting for buses, the way certain pedestrians moved with purpose that didn't match the casual pace of normal foot traffic. Old habits, Robert told himself. 30 years of training didn't simply disappear, even after 12 years of retirement. The explosion shattered the morning calm at 9:23 a.m. The blast originated from the federal building, 3 blocks ahead of Robert's current position. The sound was unmistakable: a large improvised explosive device, probably vehicle-based, designed to cause maximum structural damage and civilian casualties. Robert's passenger screamed as the shockwave rattled the taxi's windows. Other drivers immediately began pulling over, some abandoning their vehicles entirely, as panic spread through the downtown district. "Oh my God," Jennifer shouted. "What was that?" Robert's response was immediate and calm. "Stay down, Miss Martinez. Keep your head below the window line." His transformation was instantaneous. The quiet, unremarkable taxi driver was gone, replaced by someone with 30 years of experience dealing with exactly this type of situation. Robert's hands steadied on the steering wheel, his breathing became controlled and measured, and his mind began processing tactical information with practiced efficiency. Through his windshield, Robert could see the massive plume of smoke rising from the federal building. Secondary explosions suggested either a coordinated attack or the ignition of gas lines damaged by the primary blast. Civilians were streaming away from the explosion site in panic, many injured and disoriented. Emergency vehicles were already responding, but Robert's experienced eye told him they would need at least 15 minutes to establish proper perimeter control and begin organized rescue operations. 15 minutes, during which casualties would mount and potential secondary attacks could be executed. Robert made a decision that would have shocked anyone who thought they knew him. Instead of fleeing like every other civilian in the area, Robert turned his taxi directly toward the explosion site. "Robert, what are you doing?" Jennifer demanded, noticing their direction. "We need to get away from there." "Miss Martinez, I need you to call 911 and report multiple casualties at the federal building. Tell them there are civilians trapped in the debris, and that emergency services need to prioritize structural collapse rescue protocols." Something in Robert's voice, a calm authority that seemed entirely foreign to the quiet man she thought she knew, made Jennifer reach for her phone without question. As they approached the disaster zone, Robert's training took over completely. He positioned his taxi to serve as both a mobile command post and a barrier to prevent civilian traffic from entering the dangerous area. His movements were precise, economical, and purposeful. Through the smoke and chaos, Robert could see the true scope of the attack. The federal building's front facade had partially collapsed, trapping an unknown number of people inside. But more importantly, his trained eye detected signs of a coordinated assault, armed figures moving with military precision through the confusion, positioned to maximize casualties among emergency responders. This wasn't just a bombing. It was a complex attack designed to draw first responders into kill zones where additional operatives waited with automatic weapons. Robert opened his glove compartment and removed what appeared to be an ordinary road atlas. But tucked inside the atlas was a military-grade tactical radio, a piece of equipment that had no business being in a civilian taxi. "Alpha Base, this is Shepard." Robert spoke into the radio using call signs that hadn't been active for 12 years. "I have eyes on a coordinated terror cell downtown Minneapolis Federal Building. Request immediate tactical support." The response came back in seconds. "Shepard, your call sign has been inactive since 2012. Identify yourself." Colonel Robert Sullivan, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, retired. Authentication code Whiskey 779er. "I'm on scene at the federal building, and I have positive identification on hostile operatives preparing to engage responding emergency services." A pause. Then "Shepard, you're cleared hot. Tactical support is en route. ETA 12 minutes. What's your assessment?" Robert's eyes swept the scene with professional thoroughness. Minimum 4 hostiles with automatic weapons, positioned in elevated locations to engage first responders. Primary explosive was designed to channel emergency services into predetermined kill zones. "This is textbook terrorism with military-level planning." "Understood. Can you mark targets for incoming air support?" Robert looked at Jennifer, who was staring at him with a mixture of confusion and growing recognition that the man she thought she knew had never existed. "Negative on air support. Too many civilians in the area. I'm going to neutralize the threat on foot." "Shepard, you've been out of active service for 12 years. Wait for backup." "Alpha Base, people are dying. I'm not waiting." Robert turned to Jennifer, his expression gentle despite the tactical situation developing around them. "Miss Martinez, I need you to exit the vehicle and move to the Starbucks across the street. Stay there until emergency services give an all clear." "Robert, who are you?" she whispered. "I'm someone who made a promise a long time ago to protect innocent people. Today I have to keep that promise." Jennifer hesitated, then grabbed his arm. "Be careful, I always am." After Jennifer left the taxi, Robert opened his trunk and removed what appeared to be a standard emergency road kit. But inside the kit was equipment that belonged to a very different kind of emergency body armor: night vision goggles, a tactical knife, and a compact submachine gun that had been carefully maintained despite 12 years of retirement. Robert changed clothes with efficient speed, trading his taxi driver's polo shirt and slacks for tactical gear that transformed him into someone entirely different. The quiet, unremarkable 68-year-old had become Colonel Robert Sullivan, one of the most decorated special operations soldiers in U.S. military history. Moving through the chaos with ghost-like stealth, Robert began neutralizing the terrorist positions one by one. His approach was methodical, precise, and completely silent. The first operative never knew what hit him, a single targeted strike that rendered him unconscious without alerting his associates. The second position required more finesse. The terrorist was positioned on the third floor of a damaged office building, with clear sight lines to the area where paramedics were attempting to reach injured civilians. Robert scaled the building's exterior, using techniques he hadn't employed in over a decade, his 68-year-old body remembering movements that had once been as natural as breathing. The terrorist radio crackled as Robert approached from behind. Phase 2 is go. Light up the paramedics when they reach the courthouse steps. Robert's response was swift and decisive. The terrorist was unconscious before he could transmit a reply. By the time emergency services established their perimeter, Robert had neutralized all 4 terrorist positions and secured the area for civilian evacuation. The coordinated attack that should have resulted in massive casualties among first responders had been completely disrupted by a single man who was supposed to be nothing more than an aging taxi driver. FBI agent Sarah Chen was the first federal responder to arrive on scene. She had been briefed about the mysterious tactical support that had cleared the area before official response teams arrived, but she wasn't prepared for what she found. "Are you the individual who made radio contact claiming to be Colonel Sullivan?" she asked, approaching Robert as he secured the last terrorist operative. Robert looked up from where he was zip-tying the unconscious man's hands. "Yes, ma'am. Area is secure. 4 hostiles neutralized. No civilian casualties beyond those from the initial explosion." Agent Chen studied him carefully. The man in front of her appeared to be an ordinary taxi driver, but he had just single-handedly disrupted a coordinated terrorist attack with a level of tactical precision that impressed even federal special operations units. "Sir, I need to see some identification." Robert removed his wallet and handed her a driver's license that read Robert Sullivan with a Minneapolis address. But tucked behind it was another form of identification, a military ID card that listed him as Colonel Robert Sullivan, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. Agent Chen's eyes widened as she recognized the unit designation. "Your Delta Force was retired 12 years ago. Now I drive taxi. What brought you to the scene today?" "I was dropping off a passenger when the explosion occurred. I recognized the attack pattern and responded accordingly." Agent Chen looked around at the secured terrorist positions, the carefully bound prisoners, and the tactical efficiency of the entire operation. "Colonel, this level of response, you couldn't have done this as just a concerned civilian." Robert's expression grew distant. "Agent Chen, I spent 30 years preparing for situations exactly like this. When innocent people are in danger, retirement doesn't change the obligation to act. Why didn't you alert federal authorities immediately? Why take action on your own?" "Because every second counts in a situation like this. While we were waiting for proper channels and official authorization, people would have died. I couldn't allow that to happen." Over the next several hours, as statements were taken and evidence processed, the full scope of Robert's background gradually emerged. Agent Chen made calls to federal contacts, and while many details remained classified, she received confirmation that Colonel Robert Sullivan had been one of the most effective special operations commanders in recent military history. The terrorist attack had been planned for months, with the specific intention of maximizing casualties among emergency responders. Only Robert's immediate intervention had prevented what could have been one of the deadliest domestic terrorism events in recent history. Jennifer Martinez waited at the Starbucks as instructed, watching through the window as emergency crews worked to clear the area. When Robert finally appeared, still wearing his taxi driver clothes but moving with a confidence and authority she had never noticed before, she approached him cautiously. "Robert," she said, "are you all right?" He turned to face her, and for the first time in 12 years of knowing him, she saw past the quiet exterior to the man underneath. "I'm fine, Miss Martinez. The area is secure now. Who are you really?" Robert considered the question carefully. "I'm exactly who you thought I was. A taxi driver who takes his passengers where they need to go safely. It's just that sometimes the job requires different skills than usual. But what you did out there, that wasn't normal." "No," Robert agreed quietly. "It wasn't.
but it was necessary. Over the following days, word of the hero taxi driver spread throughout Minneapolis. Local news outlets ran stories about the mysterious driver who had single-handedly prevented a major terrorist attack, though federal authorities kept most details classified. Robert's fellow taxi drivers at Metro Cab looked at him with new respect, though few fully understood what had actually occurred. His dispatcher, Maria Santos, who had worked with Robert for 8 years, approached him during his next shift. "Robert," she said hesitantly, "the news is saying you saved a lot of people during that attack downtown." "I did what anyone would have done in that situation." "No," Maria replied firmly. "What you did, that wasn't what anyone would have done. That was something special." Robert was quiet for a moment, cleaning his taxi's windshield with the same methodical precision he brought to everything else. "Maria, I've been driving taxi for 12 years. Every day I help people get from where they are to where they need to be. Yesterday was no different, it just required different routes." 3 weeks after the attack, Robert was approached by FBI agent Chen with an unexpected proposition. "Colonel Sullivan," she said, finding him at the taxi company's garage during his lunch break, "I'd like to discuss an opportunity with you." "I'm retired, Agent Chen. I drive taxi. I understand that. But your actions during the terrorist attack demonstrated capabilities that could be valuable to federal law enforcement. We're developing a new program, experienced military personnel working as civilian consultants for domestic security situations." Robert considered her words carefully. What kind of situations? The kind where official response might be too slow, or where someone with your background could prevent casualties that traditional law enforcement might not be able to avoid. "And I would continue driving taxi." "Absolutely. Your cover would remain intact. You'd only be activated for situations that specifically required your expertise." Robert looked out at his taxi, the yellow Crown Victoria that had been his partner for 12 years of quiet service. "Agent Chen, I retired from special operations because I wanted to help people in ways that didn't require violence or tactical interventions. But yesterday you proved that sometimes those skills are exactly what innocent people need to survive." Robert was quiet for several minutes, weighing the decision. What would be required? Periodic training to maintain readiness, specialized equipment maintained in your vehicle, and most importantly, the understanding that when crisis strikes you would have official authorization to act. 6 months later, Robert continued driving his taxi through the streets of Minneapolis. To his passengers, he remained the same quiet, reliable driver he had always been. But now his taxi carried additional equipment, hidden in compartments that appeared to contain standard emergency supplies. His radio had been upgraded with federal encryption capabilities, allowing him to monitor emergency services communications and provide tactical support when needed. Agent Chen had been right. There were situations where someone with Robert's background could make a difference that traditional law enforcement couldn't match. The terrorist attack had changed Robert in ways he was still processing. For 12 years he had successfully buried Colonel Sullivan and become Robert the taxi driver. But the attack had forced him to acknowledge that both identities were part of who he was. On quiet evenings, he would drive through downtown Minneapolis, past the rebuilt federal building, remembering the day when his two lives had collided. The memorial plaque near the building's entrance honored the emergency responders who had risked their lives that day, but made no mention of the taxi driver who had made their heroism possible. That suited Robert perfectly. He had never sought recognition for his military service, and he didn't need it for his civilian heroism either. The knowledge that innocent people were safe was reward enough. Jennifer Martinez still requested Robert specifically for airport runs, though their relationship had evolved beyond simple driver-passenger courtesy. She understood now that the quiet man who had driven her safely for years carried capabilities far beyond what appeared on the surface. "Robert," she said during one trip, "do you ever regret leaving the military?" "No," he replied, navigating through morning traffic with his usual precision. "Military service prepared me to protect people. Driving taxi allows me to help people. Both jobs serve the same purpose, they just use different tools." And if something like that attack happens again, Robert met her eyes in the rearview mirror. Then I'll do whatever is necessary to make sure innocent people get home safely. That's what taxi drivers do. We get people where they need to go. As they pulled up to the airport terminal, Jennifer gathered her bags and paused before exiting the taxi. Thank you, Robert, for everything. Just doing my job, Miss Martinez. Safe travels. After she left, Robert sat in his taxi for a moment, watching passengers hurry through the terminal doors. Each person had a destination, a purpose, people waiting for them to arrive safely.
His job,
Whether as a special operations colonel or a taxi driver, was to make sure they reached those destinations. He started the engine and radioed dispatch for his next fare. There were more people who needed rides, more opportunities to serve in the quiet, unremarkable way that made the biggest difference of all. Car 47, available for dispatch. Copy that, Robert. Pick up at the convention center, heading downtown. En route. Sometimes the most important heroism happens not in dramatic moments of crisis, but in the daily choice to help others reach their destinations safely. Robert had learned that lesson twice, once as a colonel, once as a taxi driver. Both times it had been the most important work he could imagine doing.